Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pharmaceutical Soccer. I'm so excited to be here. You can definitely tell there's a lot more pep in my voice. But pep would be the right. Yeah, that's still a word, isn't it? Is pep a word?
Pep in our step.
Yeah, that's what I thought. There's a lot more pep in my words and stuff like that, especially coming off of this weekend with a Nashville win. And also being in Nashville has been a lot of fun. I, of course, am here with Clay Trainum and Valer Shabilla. As always, my favorite two people in the world. I'm so glad I got to see you both this weekend.
Yeah, and it would be remiss for me not to mention this because very famously in Evansville circles, the Evansville University of Evansville fight song has the phrase "pep and vim." So I feel like it's fun to say that we have a lot of pep and vim in this podcast this morning.
Steven, it's nice to have you in town for another show. It's the
It,
second one in a
I
row.
know two shows in one week in Nashville. It's kind of cool. Yeah, it's kind of nuts. It's great to be back. I am still in negotiations with my contract with NSC. By the way, I'll let you know how those go. Those go. Um, because we'll find out. Money's a little tight, obviously, because we haven't been winning. So they're working out the details. We'll get there eventually, though.
Look, we have a couple friends who are semi lawyers or lawyers in their own way, and I just think you should get some legal representation and just straight shot into Ian Ayer's office.
What does
Don't
this?
even talk to anybody.
It wouldn't be the worst use of money in Nashville SC history, if we're being honest.
I mean, I'm assuming Steven would be a lot cheaper than Miguel Nazarit.
That was going to
May I
be
remind
mine.
you?
I would say definitely cheaper than Rodrigo Pinheiro,
Definitely
definitely cheaper
cheaper.
than Ake Loba.
Yeah.
And we got the win.
I don't
So
want to
with
sell you short, Steven, but you're not expensive.
I will say,
that's
Steven,
fair.
if you do get hired by NSC, then you are definitely out of the podcast. So are you willing to take that risk? I mean, are you? I'm asking. I mean, you know, then you're just a shill for the corporations or whatever.
Before the show started, I had to listen to you two just berate me about not being able to drive a golf cart that we're buying for 5 minutes. And yeah, I'm perfectly fine leaving this stinking show.
It would make more
Wow.
sense with how much he would say we, though, if he does work for NSC.
Mm. Yes. Yes.
Love you, Steven.
It's great to be back. I appreciate all the things, and it's been really good to
What did
see
you do this weekend,
all
Steven?
of.
Since you were in town, let's get to it. Let's get to it.
Fantastic. This weekend was really good. It's always fun, like to come back. It's always weird to come back to Nashville in many ways because I'm like, hey, like I'm here on vacation. Let's go do stuff. I mean, everybody's just like, yeah, we have lives. Still, what do you do? But I'm glad Saturday got to go to the match. Thank you for everybody that came up and gave just absolutely kind words about the show. I barely remember that day myself. So if you did come up to me, shout out to all of you for sure. But it was good to get back up in the capo stand for sure. Uh, I'm definitely feeling the pain of that in my calves at the current moment. But it was a lot of fun. Of course, got to celebrate a friend of the show, Anthony Mello's batch party. So that was great. Um, yeah, it was a great time to be back in Nashville, see all my, see all of you, see all my family and friends. It was a good time. I loved it.
So this isn't a typical like pharma shout out because if someone comes up and says hi to us, we like to make sure we say we talk to them. In this case, I want to shout out Seth, who didn't mention anything about pharma soccer, but I've been telling a story about Seth on this show for years, and I was finally able to tell him. And his partner, the person who was there with him, thought it was very funny. And that was, you're familiar with this, when Nashville played FC Cincinnati in 2018, everybody in Valera and I's section knew that Nashville was already in the playoffs before that game happened, except for Seth, who thought the 90th minute winner is what, or 90th minute equalizer is what sent Nashville to the playoffs. And for years, I've talked about being jealous of that feeling because I would have loved to have thought that that's how that game ended. And so I finally ran into Seth all these years later, and I was like, "Hey, we were at the fountains, And I was like, hey, I've been telling a story about you for years and I need to tell you about it. and, and so I came back and was like, all right, so here's the thing. This happened. And he goes, I don't remember any of this. And I was like, that's not surprising. He was in a good mood. So shout out to Seth. I finally told him that I've been telling stories about him this whole time, but without him knowing.
I keep talking about how crazy the vibes are different here, like even with the show, but just overall, like it's like winning does fix everything. I know you've heard that so many times, but like, man, you know,
It does.
I
It does make things
I
better.
dreaded coming in here and hearing Steven be depressed again, just hello everybody, welcome to Farmer Soccer. It looks like his allergies were bad, but yeah.
I don't know. I almost feel like there was something in the air. I felt pretty confident, like way more than normal going into that game for no reason. There was no real good reason behind it. We talked about it on the show, but I was talking to another friend of the show, Kyle, right before the game started. I was like, they're trending a little bit better on attack. Maybe they're just due for like a 3 or 4 goal game. And
Right.
that was like 5 minutes before kickoff. I went back to my seat, and the first 20 minutes that game happened. I'm like, all right, cool.
Well, I mean, I think it definitely showed, especially as the match was progressing as well. We'll obviously talk about that in detail later. Um, Look, I think it's very apparent that not all the problems with this team are fixed. Like, I don't think this is just, hey, all the team's problems are currently fixed just based on one game. But do you think do you think this match was the turning point for this team when it comes to the way the rest of the season is going to progress? Like, is this the confidence game they needed? Is this going to turn the tide, or is this just a one-off?
So I think that the first thing is you got to differentiate between the performance and the result. And I think when you have that's something Walker Zimmerman talked about after the match. He's saying we didn't have good performances and we didn't have good results either, And he said you have to at least get one of those if you want to keep going. I think it is way too early, obviously, to tell if it's a turning point or not, because we'll see what they do in Charlotte and going forward. I do believe, however, there was a feeling or maybe the vibe, I guess, if you would, within the team that it was kind of like a release that if this was a 2-1 win, I think people would still be happy about it. I think the team would have still been happy about it. But the fact that this was an emphatic win, that there was a hat trick, that all three DPs, which we'll come to, performed at this high level, and I think the fact that honestly, other than the self-inflicted wounds, Montreal had nothing showing for them. I think because that happened this way in this performance, it's more than just a result. And I do think it has the potential to kind of be the catalyst to going forward. Now we'll see what happens, but there was a little bit of a release you saw from those players who have been so frustrated for so long, just like the fans have, right? I mean, it's kind of like on both sides of the field with the players and the fans. There was a lot of release. There was a lot of tension that just all of a sudden went away and kind of came back when they scored that own goal, but went away by the end of the match.
I mean, it definitely felt like a sea change. And I think I mean, Blair indicated that, but like what we've talked about these last few weeks, especially, is a team lacking confidence. Like they're doing enough to score multiple goals. They're getting in the right spots, but they aren't finishing. They're making a silly mistake at the back. These are things that tend to get better with confidence. And so it felt like a very confident. And the other side of this is, I mean, fans like to act like they know what's going on behind the scenes or in the locker room on the basis of factors that they don't have access to. And whether you like Gary Smith or don't like Gary Smith, I saw a lot of people try to say that the team wasn't fighting for him or he's lost the team. This sort of vague things that fans say whenever a team has a couple of bad performances in a row. And say what you will about that, but that performance that happened on Saturday was a team that was very definitely playing for the fans, obviously playing to be successful, playing for themselves, but they were very definitely playing to try and right the current ship as it is.
Yeah.
That is not a performance you see out of a team that is not playing for its coach. You
Yeah,
know,
I found
we've
it funny
seen
even just going through some of the random, like just the random conversation. All the people that were like, "Oh, we're all the Gary Smith haters now." It's like, okay, let's not automatically go to this side completely, but
yeah,
there's still questions to be asked about a lot of things. But there's a good middle ground here where we could keep this going.
right. But that looked like a performance of a team that believes in the direction that they're going. And
Absolutely,
that's a clear sign of you know, hey, this is all going. We've seen this team come out first 10, 15 minutes, try and get something early, and then kind of go back into a more relaxed thing. That was 30, 35 minutes sustained, like putting it out. And by the way, that's exactly what fans want to see when a team's in bad form. You want to see a team come out and then just stick to it. Now it's unsustainable over 90 minutes, and we saw that at the tail end of the first half. But like that's exactly what you want to see. Even if Nashville hadn't scored in those first 30 minutes, the way that Nashville was putting chances, putting pressure on, that's what gets the fans behind the team. That's what gets things pushing forward. And that was really good to see. I wish we would have seen that in previous weeks, but that's kind of how you bring people back into your side.
I have a couple of points. One for Gary Smith and one with the fans. With Gary Smith, I think a lot of folks. Okay, he's been around for so long that a lot of folks just have a certain idea of him, and that's just never going to change for them. But I do think that one thing he never gets credit for, and almost never, I should say, is how flexible he is with his tactics. I don't think people understand the amount of changes and tinkering he does. I think they don't give him enough credit for the tactician he is. Not saying good or bad. I'm not saying keep him or this game doesn't change my opinion on that. I would have told you that last week as well. He changes things around. He tries to be as tactically flexible as possible with maintaining a balanced squad and a balanced performance. That doesn't always work out. He takes risks and they don't always work out. But one complaint that I've heard often is that he doesn't do that or he doesn't change things enough. And I just think that's honestly just untrue. Just look at his history, look at how many changes he's made, and look at how many of those have worked out. And some of them don't, again, but so I just want to reiterate that point. And then the other one's about the fans. The feeling around Geodis Park was so much different this time around. We did hear a couple boos here and there in the beginning before the match started, but what I think this game goes on to show you the relationship between the fans and the team performance, right? I mean, the whole thing is that, okay, let's get everybody behind the team, let's support them. But if the team is not giving you anything to support, if the team is not up to it, up to the standard, then the fan reactions die down and there's more grunts and there's more upset fans out there. However, as soon as the team started performing, then the fans were on point. So it was a good relationship to where the fans showed up really big, and I think they really got behind the team. And don't think for a minute that the players don't feel that or don't realize that. So players feed off fans, and the fans feed off the players, and that relationship is kind of like it's between the two. And I think it's a really it's a hard balance to strike at times, but when it does hit like it did on Saturday, I think we're on the way to see Geodis Park rocking more often, I guess, because of that sort of those sort of performances in those sort of games.
Yeah, I definitely love seeing Geodis Park hit. But one thing that doesn't change that is always hitting is this podcast. And that got brought up again with a 5-star review that was received. So again, if you do leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere, we will give just kind of a read of that. Clay, how was I feel like this one's good for you, Clay, to read. So why don't you go for it?
Okay. Fair enough. This was a 5-star review, and just as Steven said, we read all of them. So if you want to insult Chelsea or Arsenal, we're always happy to hear that. I'll never read anything that insults Everton, so please don't do that.
Hey, we also won this weekend, by the way. Soccer is going really good for me this week. Maybe Nashville's where I belong.
If you really want to get all of us to leave a 5-star review criticizing Liverpool, That's what we're all three of us. That's what we're all here for.
God, please.
So this review comes from, or just talk about the podcast. We're happy for you to just talk about us. It doesn't have to be related to any of that. This one comes from Octavio Edgington. I feel like I should say a sir or a lord before that. Uh, and he calls our show the NSC or the Man City of NSC podcasts, which I don't know how I feel. He said, honestly, if you're looking for an objective podcast touching on all things NSC, look no further than these guys. Love being able to keep up with the boys in gold. So shout out to the Farmer Bros for all the good work. P.S. It would be real tragic for Valère when City takes the league on decision day in a few weeks. Smiley face.
It will.
No, but thank you. No, shout out Octavio. I actually know him. We've good guy. But unfortunately he's a Man City fan. But thank you, Octavio, for the review.
Wait, is
Really
his last
appreciate
name actually Edgington? Is that really his
Yes,
last name?
yes.
Dude,
Yes.
that is
Oh.
the coolest name of all time.
Cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm supposed
Shout
to say to that. So cool.
I mean, the typical,
Good
yep,
for
all
you,
right.
Octavio.
Good for you, Octavio.
Be like Octavio. Give us a 5-star review. And even if you don't have a cool last name, honestly, you can make up a cool last name. We wouldn't know.
That's
But
true.
the
Yeah.
most important thing is give us 5-star reviews and we'll read them on the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, we're going to talk about the match in detail next. And then Nashville has a busy couple weeks coming up. And like MLS standings just don't matter. And we'll talk about that next here on Pharmaceutical Soccer. And we are back right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer at Pharma Soccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you do not know, we do have a Patreon, Pharma Soccer, for that. Please help support the show. We would really, really appreciate it. Apparently, we have a lot of fun plans when it comes to what we're doing with Patreon stuff. So please make sure you are able to help contribute. You really do help keep the lights on for the show. We appreciate all of our Patreon members. We actually asked a Patreon question over today. Well, Valère did, and we'll talk about that here later on in the show. Also, go to pharmasoccer.com and visit us there. We have a website, and it's cool. So go check that out. Anyways, Nashville walking away with a 4-1 win against Montreal. Good old hat trick by Sam Surridge and one just over the top drop down banger from Walker Zimmerman. So that was fantastic to see. And then, of course, another goal by Walker Zimmerman just for the other team. So,
I mean, Nashville really treated that Canadian team very similarly to the way that Kendrick Lamar has treated another Canadian over the last few days. It was quite a beat down for the boys in gold.
Montreal as a club are better than Drake as a rapper. I'll just go ahead and say that. I don't know what that means. Don't ask me to further tell you my opinion here. I don't have it. That's just how I feel.
when we see, this is why I like this show is so much more fun after wins, because it's just ridiculously
To be
unhinged
fair,
with what we
Montreal
talk
has
about.
had fewer rebrands than Drake.
That's good. That is good.
Anyway, moving on.
What are we doing now?
Drake's impact in the world is not as great as the Montreal impact.
Oh my god, I hate.
Okay, so moving on.
I hate the two of you so much. It's ridiculous. Anyways,
Which one of them has more academy kids? Sorry.
All I know is that after that game, I was feeling euphoric, and also I'm not touching that line that Valère said, unlike Drake. So, anyway, so Nashville, big start for the boys in gold. How'd you guys feel like kickoff?
I mean, look, it was good to see Walker Zimmerman back, of course. I think everybody was looking forward to that. I think we were really drastically looking to see what Walker's impact would kind of be like. We talk about how this team can kind of have center backs that interchange randomly, but the defensive structure has always been there. But what you don't think about with Walker is the actual presence of like the actual Walker Zimmerman presence, whether it's just his, him being a DP, him being extremely successful, obviously on set pieces as well. The way he organizes the team itself. I was just extremely happy to see that. And I was curious on what that was going to turn into to see on the pitch. And obviously it turned into something that we were, hoping to see with this team.
Well, it's like the perfect encapsulation of like Walker Zimmerman, right? Because defensively, pretty good. Obviously, he had the own goal, although I would argue that the referee played a pretty big role in that own goal happening because he blocked a Anibal Godoy interception. But there wasn't a lot of threats that Walker had to deal with defensively, and then he was massively involved in two goals. And it's easy to lose sight of how important he is on the other side of the field because he's one of the best. He's an elite defender in MLS, one of the best defenders that's ever played in the league. And so it's easy to lose sight of just how potent he is offensively. I mean, how many terrible corners have we watched Hani Mukhtar take without Walker Zimmerman out there? And then one of the first corners of the game is a Zimmerman header for a goal. But even more impressively, and we see this from we've talked about it on this show a lot, is that he has the instincts of a forward. And whenever they turn the ball over to get the Sam Surridge goal, he makes the run that clears the space for Surridge to score a goal. And there's not a lot of defenders in the league that know to make that run in that spot. He's just a very impressive player who, I think we sometimes downplay how impressive he is at times because we've seen other defenders do very good jobs with Nashville, but it's a different level. It's a different level when he's out there compared to the other guys in that role.
I also think he's developed with Nashville SC. I think he came to Nashville SC as a starting center back, national team player. I'm not taking anything away from him with that, but the way he developed into a leader, into a captain, that's been almost exclusively with Nashville SC and obviously with the USMNT on the other side. I think that part of his game, I don't know if that opportunity or that pathway was available for him at LAFC. Probably not, considering the way they handle business and considering how they build their roster. But with the way Nashville SC built their roster, he was able to kind of take that opening. And we saw last season, even with Dax McCarty on the pitch or on the team, Walker Zimmerman was still the captain. The other thing I'll say is that kind of goes hand in hand with that. And I do think that's something he developed with Nashville SC, and it's something that Gary Smith talks about. He's told us about it at least 5 times this season already, is that how good he makes players around him. When Walker Zimmerman is in that lineup, you see players around him play much better. And I know this is like an intangibles, hard to like measure type of thing, but the way that Jack Mayer was heading into midfield, this is the first time this season that I've seen Jack Mayer do that. He was going into midfield, winning battles and playing it up high. That he would never do that if Lucas McDonough or any of the other guys are behind him. Not that they are bad or anything, but there's just not that sort of stability that Walker brings.
Yeah, I mean it's confidence too. Mayer had a couple of opportunities where he may have gotten an assist on another day with a ball over the top. And that's like an easy thing to look at is the center backs are playing better when they've got, an elite center back with them. But it's not a surprise that this is the best game the midfield has probably had, you know, because you see a guy like Drew Yearwood, and now the Drew Yearwood starts to make a lot more sense because he's breaking up tackles, he's starting plays, he's forcing turnovers, he's doing all this stuff. This is stuff that he can do when he's got the safety and security of that back line behind him. And I sent Valera a text message, I think 30 minutes into this game, because we had heard in the preseason that we would be able to tell the tactical differences of Nashville SC this season pretty early on. And I think this is a game where I was like, do we think this is what Gary was talking about? Because of the way the midfield was active. I know that there's some folks talking about one of your colleagues talking about the difference in like ball progression with the midfielders, but I feel like I understand that that's something to watch out for, but at the same time, the midfield was forcing so many turnovers with all the pressure that we've seen in the past. I just said in the last segment, we've seen them start games with a lot of pressure. This is the most sustained pressure that I've seen Nashville put on a team possibly ever. Like it was 30, 35 minutes before they kind of leveled off at the end of the first half. And they came out in the second half and did it some more. And that's something that we haven't seen from the Nashville midfield, where they force a turnover over the top, immediately go in the other direction. And we saw that a lot this game.
I
Three
want
Red
to.
Bull players too. Not a
Yeah.
coincidence. You know what I mean?
Again, why the
Yeah.
year would sort of make sense.
Yeah, I want to say, because I think we got a lot to talk about when it comes to just the impact that it's going to be really funny to say every single time that like our designated players had over the match. But I will say this is the first match when I saw Drew Yearwood, and I'm like, oh, here are the Dax comparisons that we've been looking for. That's exactly what I got out of like that I saw Drew Yearwood perform on Saturday. But we've now spent 9 minutes and we haven't even talked about the man that scored a hat trick for Nashville SC in Sam Surridge. Something that we've been waiting for when it came to Sam. Being able to be that guy that is just able to put the ball in the back of the net no matter what. Obviously, this year has been weird. We've had a couple missed opportunities, especially last week against San Jose. But what can you say about the way Sam Surridge played on Saturday?
Well, there are a few things I can say, but I think on this show last week we talked about how we're not worried about it. And Clay, at least I think all three of us said Sam is not the problem. He seems to be getting into and he's finishing at a good rate too, honestly. And he's getting into a good positions and goals will come for him. I think we all kind of agreed on that. There was a little bit of a Twitter online chatter about how he needs to be better and perform better, which I think that's fair. I think when the team is, losing and not winning, I should say. Yeah, you look at the DP number 9, he's the second best paid player in the team or the third best paid player in the team. So yeah, he should be. I get fans demanding that he should score more and all that. However, at the same time, what we talked about was how he is capable of scoring as well as doing all these other things, which are hold up play. The amount of times he shifts to the right, sometimes even to the left, the amount of times he opens up for others. And even if you look at his goal, his second goal, Nashville's third, he's making that late run from behind because he was at the back trying to win a ball. So, I mean, Walker Zimmer ends up winning that ball and making the run. But the thing is, he is trying to create more to others as much as he's trying to create to himself. And that is one thing that Gary Smith teams and Nashville SC teams have always needed from their striker. The other point I want to point out is that he scored 3 goals. All 3 of them were with his foot. There's this sort of belief out there that Sam Surridge is this tall guy who you just ping crosses to and he scores and that's it. And that's all he is, that all he does. He does some hold up play and that's it. I think we've been saying this, and I said it in my Film Friday video that I did scouting him when Nashville first signed him. He's very technical. He's very good on his feet, and he's faster than you think. People see a 6'3" striker and just assume that's what he's there for. He's very technical. He's good at interplay. We've seen it all around. We saw it with the Leagues Cup. He passes the ball really well. He runs with the ball really well, and he's technically secure on the ball. So I think that part of his game kind of goes unnoticed because people see his height and the way he looks and just assume Holland or something like that. But I do think his on the ball play is better than what people give him credit for.
And that's not even, he is still good in the air. That's the thing. It's just he's more
not
than
taking that away.
And I think the best example of that was actually a pattern of play where he didn't score. Let's be honest, the way that game was, it was a bit of a racetrack at times late in the game. And Surridge tried to dribble like 70 yards to get a shot off, and he ended up getting fouled a few yards outside of the 18. But he basically dribbled through like 3 or 4 people before he finally got caught and fouled. He kind of got into a little bit of a cul-de-sac. And you're not trying that if you aren't technically gifted. And I will say this, like, we've seen him in a position where he's had to put in crosses and things like that. He can do that. But that was the most, for me, that was like watching the game. That's the way Nashville wins. Like the way that I think Valera's colleague Ben Wright had a side by side of one of his goals from the League Cup last year, and it looks like the same goal. It's the same pattern of play. You force the turnover, big ball over, get the ball in for a shot, like quick, playing quick, and that's what I like to see from Nashville, because that's when I know that they're performing. And I mean, this bleeds right into the Hani Mukhtar thing too, right? Because like on a different day, Hani Mukhtar might have a hat trick. I mean, he should have had at least one tap in, if not two, if whoever Schaffelberg in one case doesn't pick his head up, doesn't look over where Honey's got to tap in. There's another one where it might have been Sam where he goes to the opposite post instead of playing the through ball in where Honey's on goal. And then Honey missed a couple of headers that were one hit the crossbar and two were right to the keeper.
Oh,
And
and one
so
hit the
he
side
finishes
post as
with two
well. Yeah,
assists. He finishes with two assists, but to me, he might be the player of the match. Like he was involved in absolutely everything, uh, even more so than Sam was, and Sam had a hat trick.
well, and I think that's the way that I think that's the way this team is orchestrated. Like, Hani's always going to be a particular presence, but it couldn't always just be Hani that's putting the ball in the net. You needed somebody else that was also going to participate in that. Whether it's like great, fantastic goals or not, it's still we still needed somebody scoring those garbage goals. Like the third goal that Sam Surridge scored, we were all confident that ball at some point was going in the back of the net. We just didn't know who was actually going to score the goal. I'm glad it was Sam, but like that's what we should be expecting from this team.
Yeah, I mean, look, you need multiple guys who can do it. That was the biggest complaint about Nashville SC. When Hani Mukhtar isn't scoring those or hitting the post or whatever it may be, earlier this season, Jacob Schaffelberg took some of that brunt, right? Sam Surridge is kind of coming in and doing that. You have guys who might be on the outside looking in, somebody like Tyler Boyd. Can Tyler Boyd get on the pitch? And I don't even know if Tyler Boyd is a starter right now, even when he's fully healthy, which he's almost there if he's not there right now. You know what I mean? He's competing with Drew Yearwood. He's competing with technically, I guess, Schaffelberg as well in a way. But you can't take Mukhtar or Sam Surridge off the field. So now you're limited to pretty much Drew Yearwood or Tyler Boyd. And Drew Yearwood got an assist and a secondary assist and played a really good match. If
Yep.
I'm Gary Smith, I have a little bit of a choice here because to me, coming into this match, I would have told you, coming into the season, I would have told you Tyler Boyd is a starter. But with this new system, he's going to have to earn his way back in.
Well, and then you also have Sean Davis playing in a more advanced role than he has the last 3 weeks, especially this past game. And I mean, Sean Davis, that's a clear game of a midfielder who's not necessarily put any stats in, but is showing up in the right places repeatedly. And it was weird because it takes getting used to because you're not used to seeing him on the edge of the 18 in the attacking third, but he's getting there, winning a ball back, recycling a ball, things like that. And that's something that we haven't seen a lot of prior to the last few weeks.
Yeah, like him and Godoy switched. Like earlier in the season, Godoy was the more advanced one, and he would go and push, and you saw him really close to the box, kind of in the same line as Hani, really. And then more recently, we've seen Sean Davis do that role and Godoy hanging back. But overall, I asked Gary about the midfield and specifically Drew Yearwood, and I think we're finally seeing some of that clicking or maybe some improvement, I should say. I still think Nashville is missing a midfielder, honestly. I think another midfielder who's pushing a little bit would make it better. I also think Anunga has had a really good season so far. Even last game, he was a little coming off the bench. He wasn't there yet. And then Omar Sadic is a guy I am curious if we're going to see more of him because I feel like he has the potential to be a solution in that final third. I feel like he might have the passing range to do that. We just haven't really seen enough of him to tell you one way or another. I would love to see him when Nashville aren't necessarily chasing a goal and maybe in a more positive situation.
Well, we're talking about this, and we're talking about this team in the way this is attacking. We want us to continue to see this team attack and score the goals that they did. Valera actually put out and asked for questions, and we actually got a question specifically on this. There's two questions that were asked from our Patreon members, so thank you so much. The first one, I'll get to that next week. I promise you. I'm really sorry. I need to make sure I update that and get that to you next week. You'll know what I'm talking about next week. So I will do that. But this question came from Matt, and I'll put this to you, Clay, first. Coming out of the Montreal match that saw us reach the attacking potential that so many of us believe we have had. What do you guys think it will take NSC to put out more performances of this caliber more consistently against higher level opponents?
Well, I mean, the big thing is for me, I think that match starts like what we see from the amount of turnovers that Nashville was able to force. Like everything comes from that pressure, especially those. And then you get a goal, you get an early goal. And that's a game plan that Nashville has used prior. Like last year during the League's Cup run, we were talking about first 20 minutes. If they get something, that'll be great. If they don't, we'll see them relax a little bit. And that's kind of what they did for a lot of last year. It didn't always work, especially down the stretch, but we saw Nashville on the front foot first 20, 30 minutes, try and get something. And if it doesn't work out, then figure it out a new game plan. And I think an extended amount of like, well, trying to press something, you may give up a goal at the back. It may happen. But if you can get this sort of going, you can make it very difficult for people to pass. I think that in this league and MLS, what we've seen, especially with teams trying to play it out of the back, is players are uncomfortable passing in those situations. Goalkeepers are uncomfortable, defenders are uncomfortable because in this league there aren't enough players who are skilled enough to do that consistently. And so forcing teams to pass, make uncomfortable passes will get you something. And when you have a player like Hani Mukhtar, who might be, other than the obvious, because obviously there is a player who's better at basically everything than every other player in MLS. Hani Mukhtar is among the best off a turnover, in transition, going up, running at the goal. Like you get more opportunities for Hani to be the best version of Hani Mukhtar if you are forcing turnovers, if you're forcing mistakes. And so if they can get the midfield to the point where they're doing that and they're able to do that because the defense is solid at the back, or at least dependable enough to be risky, then we're going to see Nashville be able to do this, whether it's Montreal or whether it's a better team like an FC Cincinnati or something like that later on in the season.
You just said better team in FC Cincinnati. I know, but it still hurts.
I'll give you a
has to beat
couple.
FC Cincinnati, so
There are a couple sort of off the field things that Nashville cannot control really, which is injuries. I think if they stay healthy is the biggest thing, and then also the confidence. But I'll give you something on the pitch. On the pitch, I think the three at the back has to stay. It seems like the team's getting more comfortable with it. But what it allows you to do is play a higher line without necessarily risking the over the head ball that kind of comes the other way. And I think that higher line is allowing Drew Yearwood to be sort of in that midfield area where Hani Mukhtar used to drop. And because Drew Yearwood and Sean Davis are in that midfield area, you're looking Hani Mukhtar being in a closer to the final third, going back to what Clay was saying of putting him in that position where he's the most dangerous. So the higher Hani Mukhtar is, and he's talked about it himself as well. So the higher he is on the pitch, the bigger impact he will have on goal scoring. And I think that's one thing that we're going to see Nashville SC stick with is the three at the back because it allows for Hani to be higher on the pitch. And also it doesn't really take away from Schaffelberg's game, which is run down the field, right? So you kind of get the best of both worlds with it. And I know we're in 2024 and we've already addressed this a million times. Three at the back or five at the back doesn't mean it's more defensive or less defensive. I mean, you look at some of the best teams in the world, they play with three at the back. Some of them play with four at the back. The formation means almost, nothing. It's more about how the players actually are on the pitch. So I will discourage people from looking at three at the back and say, oh, Nashville is more defensive. I don't think it works like that because on the pitch, it doesn't work that way.
I also thank you so much for that question, Matt, and thank you, Clay and Valaire, for that. I also think you both are not thinking about the contribution that I made being back in Nashville, but it's okay. That's perfectly fine. I still love
it. That's fair.
Thank you.
Bring Steven back to Nashville.
Yeah. I have one quick question. I know we're running a little long on this second segment, but Valaire kind of mentioned it, and I'm just kind of curious. How do we think this changes when Shaq comes back?
So that was, I had that kind of on the rundown. I think Shaq slots into that right wing back pretty easily. I do think that gives Muyl a different opportunity to play in that Yearwood role because I think we've seen him there before. I am kind of okay with Shaq Moore being on that right wing back because I think he does have the speed to recover, and also he has at times shown his ability to cross. I think more so even than somebody like Schaffelberg. However, the other side is my biggest question because what happens to Lovitz on the other side? Because he doesn't seem to be fitting at center back. I don't know if he's actually a wing back. So what happens there?
Well, and then what happens with Schaffelberg? Because I will say
Right.
Schaffelberg put in two of the best crosses of his career on those two Hani misses on headers. But I mean, Schaffelberg has grown into a role there that you want to make sure that you can push forward. So it's an interesting question. I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
We'll have more on next week for sure because we'll see
Yeah.
more of it.
Yeah, and we have a lot coming up. MLS table, we'll talk about a little bit. I want to talk about some stuff just with the league itself. And we have Charlotte coming up in a busy next couple weeks starting. So we'll talk about that next right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer. And we are back right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer at PharmaSoccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Again, you can also check us out on our Patreon, PharmaSoccer there. Also our website, pharmasoccer.com. Okay, so before we get into Charlotte, we have some MLS matches to talk about. It was a weird week with a lot of bad teams winning over the week for sure. There's one random thing I want to bring up when it comes to the league. This because I believe this was the first week that this was implemented into the league. And it's so stupid that I'm celebrating this, but I want to give a shout out to the league for the VAR announcements in the stadium. Can we please give a shout out to the league for that specifically?
So this is the second week they're doing it. This was supposed to be a thing that started with the season, but considering where the referees were, they didn't do it until last week where they started. I do like them. They're a little corny, I think, but I do like them. I think they need to work on their terminology a little bit. Like I heard somebody say tripping, one of the referees or something like that. I was like, this doesn't sound like soccer to me. So like maybe like just work on the terminology. I don't know if I'm getting the right word, but I don't know. I heard some word, but I do think overall is a net positive because I feel like a lot of times the fans in the stadium have no idea what's going on.
Well, and they don't show any replays in the stadium when there's a VAR check, it seems like.
Right.
So if you're not going to show replays, the least you can do is have a ref come out and say exactly why. And so,
And don't quote me on this, but I believe the Premier League is implementing this next season. I'm pretty sure.
Are they really? Interesting.
I think so.
Well, hey,
yeah,
I thought it was cool to see, for sure, especially in our stadium, just to kind of get more of an understanding of what's going on. I do wish that like they would put the discussions on the broadcast. I forgot what league did that. I think it was actually a football league. They went over like what it was like.
well,
Um,
cricket does that.
yeah,
Cricket does that and has done it for years. So I mean, there was a USL writer who said it was an Americanization of sports. I'm like, well, they do it in cricket. And so that's certainly not an Americanization.
And I think we've heard some game. So the Premier League releases some of the referee PGOML, not the Premier League, releases some referee discussions for certain games, but they kind of pick and choose which ones to release, obviously, because they're a corrupt organization or whatever. But no, I'm just kidding. But also, I think we've seen some MLS ones, but again, we don't see it every time, and I would love to see it every time. Or what I would love more is give the reporters a chance to talk to the referees afterwards. We're only allowed one question from a poll reporter to the referee, only when like we're not allowed every single game as well. So I would love for reporters to have a chance to kind of question the referees or even get more clarification from referees, just like we do with players and coaches.
yeah, and it was a weird week of soccer for sure. Like I said, and I mean, weird in some ways. I'm not sure if you guys knew this. I know we talked about it kind of in the second segment a little bit when it came to a player better than Hunt. Did you guys know that Lionel Messi is still good at soccer?
Never heard of
I
them.
just said during the break that I went to the concourse at halftime and I was like, yeah, so New York Red Bulls were up 1-0 at the half. Like, oh, wow, who they playing? It's like Miami. And I'm like, oh, wow. And it's like, yeah, Messi had a goal and 5 assists in the second half, so they lost.
Hey, New England got a win. That's cool. Real Salt Lake is really good. It's not like crazy shocking to me, but they are really good. And the team that we are playing on Saturday in Charlotte also got a win as well against Portland. Any other results or news stories or anything stand out to you guys when it comes to the league?
I was upset that the Sunday games were kind of boring. Well,
Yeah,
especially
it's
the
kind of
second one.
unfortunate. Like, especially you expect like LAFC Seattle to have a little bit more fire in
Right. Well,
that.
LA Galaxy, Seattle.
Sorry, yeah, LA
LAFC
Galaxy.
lost to San Jose, which was wild as well because I don't know. I looked at Ben in the press box and I was like, I guess the tie wasn't terrible last week. I don't know. I mean, they just beat LAFC, who beat Nashville 5-0. So, you know, just MLS things. And
Classic MLS.
If you look at Charlotte's results, I know I'm jumping into Charlotte already, but if you look at their results, man, it's all over the place. I mean, it is literally all over the place. I don't think they are a good team for what it's worth. I think Dean Smith is a stabilizer of a coach, and I think Charlotte needs stabilizing. They're missing two DPs, or they have two DP spots open. So like that's probably why they're not a good team. I think once they fill those two in with Dean Smith's guys, there might be a better Charlotte out there. I think they have the potential to build something there.
Yeah, I mean, we could just get into Charlotte now and talk about it. When it comes to their results, Valer, um, what besides the fact that they're all over the place, is there anything that does stand out to you when it comes to something Nashville needs to worry about?
Well, I would say they're very good at home. I mean, they've had 4 wins at home, only one draw, and only one loss. Other than those 4 wins, they're a very good home team, and we've seen that stadium being filled up with 60,000 fans or 50,000 fans or whatever. And I think this being another Southern team, I think there will be a lot of tickets sold to it because fans are familiar with these sort of rivalries, if you would. I know Charlotte isn't like some sort of big rival for Nashville SC or anything like that, but there is something there. There is this Southern connection that I think will sell more tickets than your usual one. And I think with that being said, and them being good at home, they have everything to play for. They still are looking for that sort of superstar player. They don't have that forward. Enzo Capetti is their only DP, and he finally got his first goal in MLS this season just last week against Portland. Before that, he hadn't scored yet. So they don't have anybody sort of crazy in form up front, but Enzo Capetti definitely has the skills to be that if he continues on his form from last game.
Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting, especially off of this week, to see kind of what Nashville does go into. Do you think Nashville kind of pushes on Charlotte a little bit, or do you think they play it back and kind of, just a little bit more passive like they have had done sometimes on tough away trips?
I think they're going to gun for it, honestly. I think they're going to come out. I don't know that they're going to press in the way that we saw against Montreal, but Charlotte they just lost 3-0 at home. Um, no, sorry. They lost 3-0 to Minnesota a couple weeks ago. They're coming off their lowest attendance at home this past week against Portland. I say lowest, it's 27,000. It's one of the best numbers in the league. But we're starting to see maybe there's a way to get the fans kind of out of the game. And if you can get the fans out of the game early, 27,000 is a lot, but 27,000 in a 75,000 seat stadium, that can start to feel like if you're on the field and you're Charlotte and you're down early, that can start to feel like an albatross. And so I think you're going to see Nashville gun for it. Nashville's going to be looking for confidence. They're going to be looking to build. They're going to be they would have been looking at this stretch of games prior to the San Jose game, which we know what happened, as a chance to get right back on track. And I think that they're going to approach games that way too.
Well, let's get into the predictions and plugs for it. Let's see if Clay's prediction of what Nashville is going to do is going to stick with his actual prediction on the match. So, Clay, go ahead.
3-1 Nashville. Hani Mukhtar scores twice. Also, you should check out Pharma Soccer. You should check out Kicking at 615. You should check out Nashville Soccer Archive. You should, if you have stuff to donate to the Nashville Soccer Archive at Vanderbilt University, you should hit me up. So shout out to a couple people that have given me stuff the last few days. And I don't know, you should check out TennesseeToffees.com. Shout out to the local Evertonians.
You can skip over the last one. at Valer Shabilla on all social and definitely YouTube as well. Please subscribe and follow me. I need support, and I appreciate it when you support me. So thank you. I cover Nashville SC if you couldn't tell. Result. I was gonna go with 3-1, but since Clay said it, I'm gonna change my opinion to 2-1. I think it's gonna be an industrial win for Nashville SC. They're gonna push to start the first 10 minutes or so, then kind of hang back. Charlotte will then push, and Nashville will punish them on the counter. I will go with a goal for Surridge and a goal for Drew Yearwood. He seems to be doing all right. I think Charlotte scores maybe first or ties the game 1-1, and Nashville gets the winner. Either way, I do think Nashville has the potential to win this. So that's my prediction.
I'm trying to think. I actually think my prediction for Montreal was pretty ridiculous, but it almost kind of worked. Did I predict I predicted 5 goals, didn't I, for Nashville?
You said, I mean, you were probably closer than me or Clay.
I think I said 2 from Surridge when he ended up scoring 3, and then I think I said 1 from Jack Mayer, which didn't happen, but that's okay. I think I'm gonna go 1-1 draw for Nashville, and I think that'd be a good thing. I think we are talking about Charlotte being a tough place to play. I think Charlotte has particularly been a tough place to play for Nashville SC. So I'm gonna go 1-1 draw, and that'll start a very big week the week after for Nashville when it comes to having 2 games at home. So thank you all so much again for listening to the show. We appreciate it. Again, thank you all for all the kind words. It's always fun to talk to all of you. Yeah, looking forward to seeing how Nashville continues this run. Love to both of you, and we will talk to you next week.